Well, ladies and gentlemen, love is in the air. Don't laugh at me, Jeff. Love is in the air. Love is in the air, and leftover boxes of candy, 2/3 of the way eaten, they're still probably sitting in your house. But a couple days ago, or this past week, we've had what is traditionally referred to as Valentine's Day. Now, we're not going to go so far as to go, let's do the history of Saint Valentine's and figure out how to get a good talk out of that.
Oh, that would be something.
No, man. Love is in the air, and this is the month for a lot of relationships starting and a lot of people going on dates and a lot of expressions of love. And so one of the things that we wanted to do this week is, in this conversation, and actually for a couple conversations, is we want to answer a question. And it's a very serious question. And it's a question that can be answered by a 17-year-old. It's a question that can be answered by a 47-year-old who's single. But how do you date? What are the steps or the rubric or the ethic for dating someone well? How do you date in a Christ-honoring fashion? So it's a question that everybody wants to know the answer to.
Right.
It's one that you got to wrestle with. There's a lot of nuance to it. There's a bit of subjectivity, and yet there's some hard and fast biblical principles that are at the heart of how one should date well. So with that in mind, that's going to be our topic of conversation for the next couple of weeks. Love is in the air. How do we date well? How do we honor Jesus in our dating relationships?
Yeah.
Let me start off by saying that I've been on a lot of dates with my wife over the last 21 years. How long have you and Miss Quo been married?
We've been married 28 years.
28 years.
Yeah.
So between the two of us, it's over 50 years or right at 50 years. Well, hold on. No, over 50 years.
Yes, over 50
almost
years.
60 years.
Yes, of dating.
So 20 plus 20 is, almost 50 years of dating.
Yes.
I can tell what we went to school for. It wasn't
it's 49 years of dating.
Yeah, 49. Thank you for that, saving me. But so a lot of dating, but at the same time, there was a period of life where we were not married and dating.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about. If you're 17 years old, if you're 27 years old, if you're single and you go, this whole dating scene thing, and it's changed a lot, Jeff. Can we be honest about that?
Oh my gosh,
dating has changed a lot.
Yeah, man. And
did you meet Miss Quo on a dating website?
No, I met her at the bank where we both worked. I was a teller trainer for Bank South at the time before it became Bank of America. It was Nation Bank, Bank of America, but it was Bank South first. I was in college at Morehouse. She was at West Georgia, and that's when they had the in-store banks where they started putting the banks in the Krogers. Yeah. And so she came in, I saw her, I was like, hey, how you doing?
Hey.
And so, but no, we worked together.
Want an open account?
Right. But yeah, man, we worked together and developed a great friendship first. We were like the best of friends. Yeah. Hung out a lot, and it evolved from there, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's changed so much. I would not, I know that some people find it easy, but some people find it very difficult to date in the day and age of it. There's so many different unwritten rules now than opposed to when you and I were coming up. Like if you saw a girl and you liked her and you wanted to ask her on a date, and I didn't always, I rarely did it right, but if she said no, it's not like you would see each other again on social media all the time.
Right, exactly.
Like you might see each other in the hall at school,
exactly,
or something, but you didn't.
It wasn't that big of a deal.
No, it wasn't a big deal. You know,
it wasn't, and I think the pressure because of this digital age that
not that girls said no to me a lot.
Of course not, brother. I ain't gonna lie. I got a couple no's.
A lot of rejections.
But how you like me now? But yeah, man. I mean, we didn't live in this digital age where everything now, because of the rise of social media and this digital, we have this generation that are digital natives. They're watching how others date or do things, and so it is this pressure that I have to mimic what I think is culturally acceptable, and so people are now comparing how we date based on what they see on social media. We'll talk about our kids and stuff, but that's one of the things where
it's tougher now.
It is. It is tougher because even once we get into some of our points, like one of the things for CJ, my middle son, the young lady that he was dating that they broke up was because she was so in social media dating, and so she saw all of her girlfriends posting all this stuff, and he didn't do that, and she had a problem with it. And he was
why
like,
aren't you posting about me?
Yeah. Why aren't you posting about me? He's like, because I'm dating you, not Instagram. You know, and it was a thing for her. And I actually, when he told me, I said, see, that's not really the real. He's like, Dad,
that's the real reason.
That's the real reason.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? So yeah, it's different now, bro, than when you and I were dating and stuff. And all
right, but let's do this. Let's do this, Jeff.
Okay.
I've got some stories from
oh brother.
Tell me something funny. What's a funny dating story?
Okay, all right.
That's not gonna get you in trouble.
Oh yeah, well, my wife knows them all, and so
mine don't.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so funny dating story. This really happened to me, bro. So homecoming. I had a homecoming date, and so I like two girls, and so I asked one, and I had a backup ask. Yeah, I did.
You were a player.
Well, no, I was a planner. I was the planner.
You had a backup.
I had a backup just in case.
I don't think anybody's ever used the word plan.
Yeah, I had a back. So I originally asked one young lady to the prom, and she was like, "No, I'm going with somebody else. I mean, not the prom, it was homecoming dance." And I was like, cool, no problem. So then I asked another young lady to the homecoming dance. She said yes. So
did the second young lady know she was the backup?
No.
Okay.
No. I didn't tell her.
Yeah.
But what happens? But what happens next? You'll not believe. So, unbeknownst to me, true story, bro. My mom could attest because she thought it was crazy. So I guess they were friends and they talked about it. So the original date that I had, or the original young lady that I asked out, her date fell through. So she asked the girl that I was going to the homecoming dance if she could go with the both of us. I didn't know that. So that she was like, oh yeah, And so I go, we were all meeting at my parents' house. Her parents were coming to meet and everything. And so we're at my parents' house, and I have one little what's the corsage?
The corsage, yeah. Is that it? The flowers you put on people.
The flower you put on their wrists or whatever. Yeah. And it was for homecoming. It wasn't a prom. I don't know why I bought that, but anyway. But I have one.
Yeah.
And so she comes and out the car comes the other girl. I have one corsage, and I'm looking like, what is going on? And so my dad, no, not my dad. My dad was like, what's going on? My brother was like,
look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you.
And I'm like, no, what's going on? And so my original date comes up and is like, hey, I hope, you don't mind that the first, the one I asked said, I hope you don't mind. The original was like, hey, you want to come? So I was like, so y'all are comfortable with me having 2 dates? And so they was like, yeah, cool. And so I was like,
did you go to homecoming with 2 girls?
I did, brother.
God,
I did.
You are. I'm not a player. I'm a player.
Hey, and this was the time.
Tell me there's a photo.
It's somewhere. I have to find it.
We gotta find it.
Oh, and here's
Brian
the thing.
will self-impose something great one.
He will. I'm scared of Brian. But this is the time. This is the time back in the day where guys wore suits and the top hat and stuff.
I can't even say what's in my head right now because I'll get in so much trouble. But there's an image of what that is, and you know what it is. So you have a picture with you in a suit and a top hat.
And a top hat.
One girl's got a flower, the other doesn't.
Yeah, and they're both
on your arm.
Yes, sir. Man, my sophomore year of high school was memorable.
You were a dirty dog.
So that was probably the most interesting. And here's the thing.
That's amazing.
But look. So my mom and dad.
I disrespect you and respect you all at the same time. Like, I think less and more of you.
But look, here's the thing. So real talk. This is the honest truth. And God rest my dad's soul. He's gone to be with Jesus. But so my dad gave me enough money to take one girl on a date. So when I realized what happened, because we're going to eat first before we go to the dance. So I realized, how am I look at my dad and was like, hey, can I get a couple more dollars? And my dad was like, nah, man, I gave you enough for one. She gonna have to figure it out. So now it's like, what do I do now for dinner? And so what I did was I played like I wasn't really hungry, and I got like an appetizer. So I kind of sparsed out my money so I could pay for both. But yeah, man, it was. We
have to have a picture.
It is a picture.
There
I have
is
to ask
photo evidence somewhere.
There is photo. I might call my mom. My mom has everything.
I just need the top hat.
Man, it was 10th grade, brother. So homecoming dance, I had two. 10th grade homecoming dance, I had two.
Yes,
dates.
You did.
Yes. Well, all right. So since
I can't top that.
Listen. So what about you? What's give me I need a
funny dating story.
Yeah.
Well, nothing will top that. But when I blew out my knee twice, and so the second time I blew out my knee, I was in rehab, or what's it called, physical therapy after the surgery. And so my physical therapist worked with the professional hockey team there in Atlanta.
Okay.
What were they called back in the day? They played in the Omni.
Yeah.
Remember them? Anyways.
Yeah.
It was a brawl every time they played. Yeah. It wasn't like anything.
They had a place out there in Swanee, their little facility out in Swanee.
So anyways, he gave me he gave me tickets. And I'm like, cool, I got tickets to a hockey game. And it was tickets.
The Thunder?
May have been the Thunder.
Yeah.
But it was tickets in the players' wives box.
Oh, okay.
And so I went to, which is not I don't want to be stereotypical. I don't want to throw shade on any group. But I don't think they were wives, the way they were dressed and the way that whole box looked.
Oh, so.
It looked bad.
And this where you were?
Yeah, I needed to turn my head. Yeah. But so I have these tickets.
Did you turn your head?
So I had a date with it. So I invited a girl that I thought was cute at my school. I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
I said, hey, would you like to go see the hockey game in downtown Atlanta? You know, back before the Dome, before Phillips Arena, before all that, there was the Omni back in the day. That was the place, man.
The Omni, I mean,
I saw a lot of Atlanta Hawks games there.
Man, home Dominique.
Dominique. Yeah, those were the days. And then, like, you saw a lot of concerts there. There were a lot of shows. It was just the place to be. So we went to go to the Omni to see the hockey game. And I was nervous. You know, I'd never really taken a date out. Like, I'd gone on dates, but not like, hey, I got tickets to a professional game in downtown Atlanta. And, you know, it's just out of my comfort zone. So we go in, we have a good time. We sit in the players' wives box. And we're walking out, and I'd locked my keys in the car. Oh. And so we're in the middle of this parking lot, and there's nobody around. There's nothing. No cell phone, but by these pre-cell phones.
Yeah.
I didn't have a beeper.
Oh, man, them beepers, man.
I didn't have a beeper. I had a date, first date with me, and we've gone to a hockey game, and then we come out, and we're in this car. And so I'm literally, I mean, you know, it's just a parking lot that's a sea of nothingness.
Dang.
And I didn't know what to do. And so I'm like, I said, we're going to have to walk up to the road and see if we can get. I mean, it was downtown Atlanta, brother.
Oh my God!
And I knew what I was doing. It was like, this is not safe. It's not like I was naive. Like
right.
This was my home. I knew.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any other choices. I mean, it's just. I said, hey, here we go. Let's go for a walk. So we go up, and I go to we walk to a gas station about a half a mile away, and I literally just walked up to a guy that was in a pickup truck at the gas station, and I went,
"You did not,
hey buddy," and I said, "Man, I got locked. I locked my keys in my car." He's like, and he was a nice guy. He was probably in his mid to late 20s, and it was him and his buddy, and it wasn't a truck. Excuse me, they had a car. Apologize, they had a car, and he said, "Well, let's go see if we can figure it out. Just hop in."
What?
What else am I going to do? I should have gone to a phone and called somebody.
Now, did you and the young lady get in
we got in the car.
Of a stranger?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
What I'm going to tell you happened, though. Literally, he drives us over to the parking lot. He can't break in. He goes, I know a place, and I know a guy. But we're going to go to a place that you can't ever talk about.
What?
But I can get you out of here.
Are you serious?
And I'm like, cool, let's do it. We went to a chop shop.
Oh.
And if people don't know what a chop shop is, it's where they stolen cars and they chop
It's a
them
little
up.
criminal activity.
It's basically criminal activity. And they steal cars and they chop them up, sell the parts, or reconstruct cars. And
Yes.
it's a chop shop.
It's a chop shop.
So we went to the chop shop, which I guess this guy worked. He got a piece of equipment, and he's driving us back to the parking lot to unlock my car so I get in and get my keys. I kid you not. Now, this is important for the story.
Yeah.
He was a black man. Okay. I'm in the back seat. I'm 17. She's 17. We're two white kids. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I swear to you, the O.J. Simpson case was the thing. He literally turns around, puts his arm on the seat. He turns around, and he goes, "So what do y'all think about O.J.?"
What? You are kidding.
I kid you not, man. In the car back to the Omni parking lot with leaving the chop shop.
So funny.
This my date, just her eyes just got big. She was so quiet. She wasn't going to say a thing. And I just... I'm such an idiot, Jeff. I just put my fist in the air and I went, "Free the juice." Free the juice. So, and I just was like, I'm doing anything I can to get through this situation. And he looked at me as serious as he could, and he goes, "I think he's guilty." And I went, "Oh my God, I guessed wrong." There you go. That's what stereotyping gets you right there. And so anyways, he takes us to the parking lot. I mean, awesome. One little thing, he unclicks it.
I think he's guilty.
I think he's guilty. I'm up there, right hand in the air, "Free the juice," you know. Oh. So he goes back and gets me in the car.
That's so good.
I tried to offer him money. He's like, "Man, I don't need your money."
Yeah.
And he drove off. He was just a good Samaritan. You know, I mean, he was a car thief, but he was a good Samaritan. And he was just like, he's like, "Hey, I steal people's cars all the time. I'm going to do a good deed today."
Yes, yes.
And it just happened to be
it justified the other millions of cars or hundreds of cars.
I don't know, man.
Bro, so you took your date
into the players box.
Into the players box.
With a lot of women who...
Thrashers.
Thrashers. That's what it was. It was the Thrashers.
Yes.
All they did was fight, man.
Yeah, they did. Yes. So you take your date to the players box where the hockey players had their mistresses.
Basically. Basically.
You then walk her in downtown Atlanta.
Yes.
It was nighttime, I'd imagine.
Oh, it was pitch black.
Yeah. Okay. And to a gas station. Gets in a car and again, as you guys can see, I'm a black man, so I can say this. So you get in the car with the black man.
Don't stereotype. Jeff, don't stereotype. See where it got me.
Just get in the car with a brother who quickly acknowledges that he is a criminal.
Well, he just said you can't ever talk about where I'm taking you.
Yeah, that's the acknowledgement.
So I guess that's yes.
By the way, in the process, has a conversation just to get your thoughts on OJ. Mm-hmm. You guessed wrong.
I guessed wrong.
You actually visually see the illegal operations, which is actually dangerous within itself. I'm surprised. He is a good Samaritan because in this moment, he's or an idiot because...
No, we sat in the car.
But were you at the location?
Oh, yeah. He pulled up in front of the shop.
Yeah, that was pretty dangerous. Typically, they won't do that.
Well, a lot of times they're auto repair places that is the front, and then
because you didn't go in. He just went got
yeah.
But still, he still took you.
He took me there.
Yeah, and so I brought you back, man. Hey, listen, that's when you know
the Lord was with me.
The Lord is your shepherd. That is awesome. So
hey, Jeff, there wasn't a second date. She wasn't up for round two.
That was, dude, that's hilarious. So we have an accidental double date, and
was it though?
It really was, bro. Mm-hmm. I promise, it really was. It really was. I didn't.
The photo evidence speaks otherwise, Jeff.
No, there's a context.
In the words of Shakespeare, I thinkest thou protestest too much.
Context matters in everything. I think that's what we've learned about this. But it's funny, man.
It was an innocent mistake that you were trying to take two girls to homecoming.
No.
It was an innocent mistake that you had a backup date. That's an innocent mistake.
Well, Just in case I got rejected.
Just in case, of course.
Which
yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
She rejected me.
That's why you teach the time management session at SLU 101. This is where it started.
I want to transition. So dating. That's so good. But I will say that
How are we going to transition?
I don't know. I dated my wife well, I think. I think we were in
I did it so bad.
Yeah.
I dated so poorly. And then we got, you and I just know because of how close we are.
Yeah.
We just got blessed.
Oh my gosh. I outpunted my coverage 10 times over.
Every day. Me too. But it's like I did it so poorly for so long that I knew I was doing it poorly.
Yeah.
Like I dated a girl one time and I didn't tell her my age. She was 3 years older than me.
I did that
and
before.
I was 16 and she was 19, and I finally fessed up. She was like, I can't date you. That's illegal. And she broke up with me, you know.
That happened to me as well. Yeah.
I just did it poorly.
Yeah.
And I quit dating when I got serious about my faith. And it was because I'd done it so poorly.
Yeah.
And then I met Christina, you know, and literally at SLU as a youth pastor, I brought a group, and that caused me obviously to reconsider my position on dating. You know, I just. But for me, I'd done it so bad, and I was so committed to Jesus at that point in my life. I just didn't want to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I wanted to honor whoever I was with well.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, let's talk about how to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
let's talk
that's
about how to do
important.
that, because let me start with this, Jeff. There are 5 phases to any relationship.
Yes.
And I'm teaching this to my kids now, primarily my teenagers, and I have 4 of them. By the end of this month, I'll have 2 15-year-olds, a 17-year-old, and an 18-year-old, all in one house. So,
I love it.
Anywho,
yes.
a lot of hormones floating around my house. But no, I've taught them there's 5 phases. There's friendship. Then there's you date, not exclusively. You just go, I like you.
Yeah.
Let's go on a date. Okay, maybe 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Let's do it for a little while. Then there's dating exclusively. Then there's engagement. And then there's marriage.
Right.
And so what I've said to my kids, and everybody can make their own decisions on this, of course.
that's good.
Every parent has to. Every person has to.
Yeah.
Is I've said to my children, you will not date until you're 16 at least.
Yeah.
There's just no point.
Right.
There's zero.
Yeah.
Learn to be good friends. And I'm not. And I mean, we're strict on this.
Yeah.
Like our house is very silly.
Yeah.
It's very chaotic.
Yeah.
We have all these fun traditions.
Yeah.
We are a mess.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in all that silliness
There's
and
tradition.
laughter, there's some rich seriousness to us.
Yeah.
And so my kids know, like, it's off the table. And there's not like, well, I've kind of got a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship from afar with somebody. They ain't none of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, if you can't get on board with that, you know, but I've made the commitment to my kids,
Yeah.
you'll never have to hide anything from me.
Yeah.
I'm going to teach you how to date.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I grew up, you know, it was just go figure it out, you know? And my parents were great.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
and I could take anything to them.
Yeah.
And they were godly parents, but they didn't teach me how to date.
Same. Yeah.
You
sure.
know, I had to figure it out on my own. And so
Absolutely.
I've told my kids, you're not going to have to figure this out.
Yeah, that's
I
good.
will walk alongside you and celebrate
Yeah.
with you that process. But that's part of my discipleship process with you, is that I'm going to teach you how to date. So I think it's important to understand those 5 phases. Friendship, dating, exclusively dating, engagement, and then marriage. And so my children, with those 5 phases in mind, understand that up until the age of 16, they don't all the pressure's off.
Right. That's
They
good.
just focus on being friends.
Yeah, that's really good.
Guy friends, girlfriend, just be friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after the age of 16, if there is a little something, then let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And let's assess whether or not you're ready or not ready.
Yeah.
And then when we decide you're ready, and it is a we decision.
Right,
Ultimately, Christine and I have the final say.
Yeah.
But it is a we decision. Like I'm walking with them.
Yeah, that's
to
good.
find out if they're ready. And then if they're ready, that's where our conversation today, or these 2 parters begin, Jeff. We're going, okay, then what does it look like?
Yeah.
And we've collabed on this, and there's 7 kind of steps to dating in a way that honors Jesus.
Absolutely. And I think this conversation is so important, Brent, because of the fact that we, as we talked about earlier, we live in a culture that, man, it is, let's just be honest, there's a lot of compromising that's taking place. And we think about morality, you know, in our culture today. I mean, the lines are really blurry. Yeah. And I think that there is an ethical approach. And
that's what we're going to do.
An ethical approach to this idea of dating. And the hope is not just for our, you know, our student listeners, but even our adult single listeners, that these principles you can apply to your life. Because I just think, you know, as our theme for Lift Tour is inverse. We're talking about countercultural teachings of Jesus. Well, I think we're talking about right now his countercultural approach to dating. Yeah. And so these 7 principles, I think, you know, are great, a great outline for that. So let's
and whenever you talk about an ethic, and I'm Jeff, I'm saying this for people listening. Obviously, I would never insult your intelligence. You have a PhD and you're smarter than I am. But I would say
I don't know about that part.
An ethic is a codified approach to a real world problem based on principles.
Exactly.
So we're talking about the principles that inform this approach, this codified approach, if you will. Like, we're going, okay, let's take it all and put it together in a scope and a sequence. It's a principle-informed approach to real-world moral issues.
Yes, sir.
And that's what we're talking about when we go an ethic, a rubric, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. That's what we're getting at here. Yeah. So I think the first one is this, Jeff. You got to ask this question. What is your why? You know, the Apostle Paul would teach us that whether you eat or whether you drink, and then he threw in this pesky phrase, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. And that phrase, do all to the glory of God, or particularly the glory of God, whenever you see the word glory or glorified in Scripture, God is always made obvious. So whatever you do, make sure that God is obvious. So is your why motivated by godly things?
Yes.
So that God is made obvious in that date. Yeah. And if it's not, we got to check ourselves. If it's not, then don't go on that date.
Right. And that requires us to really kind of look introspectively within ourselves. And we got to say, hey, you know, I want to be honest. You know, am I dating or desiring to date because it is the thing to do?
Because I feel left out.
I feel left out, right. You know, I want to be liked. I want to be accepted. I want to be like my friends. All of my friends are. Thus, I should be, you know. And
or my mom and dad started dating at a certain age. Right. So I should start dating at a certain age. There's a list a mile long of unhealthy reasons why people date.
Exactly. And that's the dangerous thing. And I love that of answering that question. Why? Because what we're talking about in all of these steps is there is a level of intentionality that you must take when you approach this process of dating. Why? Because, Brent, we should be committed as followers of Jesus to be good stewards over our lives, you know, and so when you are being a good steward over your life, you pause for a moment, and you ask very critical questions that are significant to your whole person. So it starts with the why. Yeah. And I would suggest that if you cannot fully answer that question, Pause. That's it. Then maybe this isn't the season right now or the moment to date. Answer the question first, and then I think you can proceed accordingly. And there's nothing wrong, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know your why yet. You know, there's nothing wrong. Don't feel the pressure of saying, "Man, I need to know my why right now." No. Yeah. Sit with that.
Sit with it.
So there is a deep-seated level of conviction and connection to that why, so that you don't compromise later down the line.
If you don't know your motivation, then you'll inevitably end up with sinful application.
That's good.
And so that's why this question is so important. Is it being done to the glory of God? Is it being done for unhealthy reasons? The answer is, in that case, stop. There's no outside cultural force that needs, you know what I mean? Like your parents and what they did, and most parents would tell you, don't do it the way we did it, right? Your friends, or just the larger narrative of pop culture, or to be quite honest with you, and I don't mean just to bring this up because it's in the psyche of every human being on the planet right now. Oh, but Taylor Swift is in love right now. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there is a contagion with this stuff where I just feel like I have to do this because this is the thing to do. No, you don't.
Right.
As Christians, that is never the approach.
Right.
We are countercultural. We have been set apart to the gospel of God.
Yes.
We live differently. And we don't start with what's the larger scope of what's going on.
Right.
We start with the glory of God.
Yeah, man.
Is God glorified through saying yes and going on this date?
Yes.
And if the answer is yes, like for example, one of my kids wanted to go on a date with somebody. They had done the friendship phase well. It was one of my daughters, so whenever it's my daughter, the young man has to come and see me.
Yeah.
And there's a nice little meeting that happens. It lasts about an hour. And a good friend of mine, Pastor Jordan Easley, gave me this idea, but I actually have an agreement that I have the young man sign.
I love that.
And it's just a handshake on paper. Like, okay, here's what I value.
The
Here's
rules
what our
of
home's
engagement.
about. Yeah, like here's I need to know you're a man of your word. Here it is. And but when it was time for them, they felt for each other a certain way. They wanted to go on a date. They're mature. They're strong in their faith. And so I asked her that question. I said, "Is God honored through this?" And she said, "I feel like I'm not motivated by anything sinful. I'm not doing this because I want other people are doing it or because I want to have something physical or any of those things. It was just like, no, I want to know him more than just a friend.
Yeah, that's great.
And that
man.
does honor God,
Yeah.
Dad. And I went, cool.
There it
Let's
is.
rock and roll.
Yeah.
Tell him to come over. We'll have that meeting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the first question always has to be a motivation.
Man,
question.
I love
What's your
that.
why?
That's good. That's good. So what's number 2?
Let's get a couple more. Maybe let's get a couple more in.
Yeah.
Number 2 is, are you strong in your faith? You know, the Romans 14 is probably one of my favorite biblical texts on freedom in Christ. And let's be clear, there are no chapters and verses on here's how you should date in 2024. So what we have to do is we have to apply the principles of Christian freedom to this subject matter.
Yeah.
And what happens is Paul in Romans 14 shows us, and he uses, a couple different examples, like is one day more holy than another?
Yeah.
Another case study in Romans 14 is eating meat versus just eating vegetables because of whether meat had been sacrificed to a false god or not. All those. So he uses these real world examples in his day and age, and then applies these principles of Christian freedom. But what he does is he in his all of his discussion, he's talking about how the strong are the only ones that are positioned to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
The weak make the wrong decisions. And so if you're not strong in your faith, you're going to make poor decisions.
Yep.
And so the second question is, I would never encourage or give wise counsel to a student or to an adult to go on a date if their roots are not deep in their own faith.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. And I think that's so important. It's like, the Bible says in Luke 16:13, like, when we're not strong in our faith, we serve two masters.
Right.
We try to serve two masters, and you cannot serve two masters. And you have to remember that we are to have no other gods before the God, the sovereign God. And so having those deep roots, Brent, keeps your motives pure. It keeps you focused, and it also kind of lessens your willingness to compromise your character or your integrity because of fleshly desires, right? And so I think it's important that we gotta understand. Like I said, Luke says that you're gonna either hate one or serve the other, or you'll be loyal to one and despise the other. When we don't have this deep sense of roots in our faith, then the inevitable is you will waver.
Yeah, that's right.
And so this idea of saying, hey, are you deep in your faith, is because we're saying, do you have a strong foundation and base?
Right.
Because we all are flawed individuals, flawed human beings. We're human with we're human with flesh, and we have fleshly desires. So it's important to have that deep root. So when you're in those relationships, you do not compromise,
right?
Or there is not this willingness or desire.
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. The desire to compromise.
Yeah.
And so it's so important to make sure that you are very much deep in your faith, have those deep roots.
Yeah. Weak believers make poor decisions. Weak believers oftentimes will make decisions in the same way that an unbeliever will make decisions. That's why they're weak. And if you're weak in your faith, it's not like, oh man, we're throwing shade on you. No, we were all weak in our faith at some point. And by the way, you can be strong in your faith and then not pay attention to your walk with God and get weak in your faith again.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a question just for single.
Oh, no,
like,
no.
If I'm going to honor my wife well, if I'm gonna love her well, even after 21 years of marriage, going on 22, if I'm gonna honor her well, if I'm gonna date her well, even in like I've got to. Like, if I'm weak in my faith, our marriage is not going to be healthy.
Exactly.
If she's weak in her faith, our marriage is not going to be healthy.
Yeah.
So my ability to have, the Colossians 2:6-7 teaches us that as you have received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk in him, being deeply rooted and built up. And then he talks about let your faith be abounding with gratitude or thanksgiving, right? Yeah. And so the picture that we have is, if you have Jesus, grow in Jesus. And so let those roots grow deep, so that you will not waver in the winds of culture, if you will, the storms that may blow.
I love that.
And so weak believers will make poor decisions.
I think that's such a great phrase. If you can write something down, I think that is, if you're not driving or whatnot, but man, that weak believers make poor decisions. I think that's such a great.
I would only add one thing to that, Jeff. I know we got to move on, but it's a dangerous place in your life to assume that you can trust yourself.
That's one of my things. Yeah. Don't ever trust yourself. I would tell my kids all the time, the reason why we're having these conversations is because I want it to be so embedded in your minds and your heart that you need to approach every aspect of your life through the lens of having a strong faith and belief in Jesus. Because if you step outside of that, you begin to believe your own press.
Yeah.
And don't ever think that you are that strong and I'm that much in control. No. The moment that you begin to think that you have it all together is the moment where you will lose a lot.
Yeah.
And
you don't rely on the leading of the Holy Spirit. If you don't have the lordship of Jesus Christ reigning over your life, then you don't have the ability to rely on the Holy Spirit at work in your life. Yeah. In other words, Galatians chapter 5 bears no relevance to you if you're not growing.
Right. Exactly. That's so true. And so, man, I love that. Like, man, it's so important that we understand that the faith, that foundation. And we think, Brent, that's like, oh, guys, thank you, Captain Obvious. But no, I think when it comes to this aspect of our lives, we really kind of set that principle aside to pursue the things that our flesh desires and what we think is culturally acceptable at this particular time.
Yeah. Like, we just can't drive this point home enough, Jeff. And it gets so over, but there used to be somebody who would say to me, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Right. A lot of people have said that, but there is this, like, we are not autonomous creatures. We are not, as Christians, we are not self-governing. Yeah. And so, like, to just assume is to deny the authority of Christ. Don't pretend to be an autonomous human being who lives free, divorced from. No. Yeah. Your freedom makes you more responsible, not less. Yes. And you are not self-governing. You live under the authority, the governing authority of Jesus Christ.
Right.
Are you strong enough to go on this day?
Right. Man, whew, that's good right there, brother. That's
good. Let's do one more.
Okay, let's do that. All right, so number 3. What do you have, number 3?
Let's do one more. My third kind of step is don't wait to determine your boundaries.
Oh, that's a good one.
A lot of times people, let me read a verse first about wisdom, because this all has to do with wisdom. And there's so many Proverbs texts on wisdom, but I love this one in 2:6, where the writer says this, for the Lord gives wisdom. I love that. The wisdom is a gift.
Yes.
Nobody should be haughty or prideful who is wise. Right? Yeah. The wisest people in the world are the most humble.
Yes,
because they know it's a gift.
Yes.
So wisdom is something the Lord gives. Yeah. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. And then the next verse, he stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly. Like, and it goes on. He guards the paths of justice, and on and on and on. But the reality is this wisdom. That word shield, wisdom can be protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're not walking wisely, you're leaving yourself unprotected.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are your boundaries in a dating relationship?
Yeah.
Don't wait until the dating relationship to decide those boundaries.
And don't wait till you're in a moment or a compromising position to try to think to yourself, okay, what should my boundaries be in this moment right here? Because if you wait till the moment, you're going to have a higher tendency to commit the sin.
You know, we're talking about a biblical ethic. What you just described is situational ethics. It's like, I am going to determine what's right when I'm in the situation.
Right.
No. You have you've already determined what's right because you're strong in your faith and walking with the Lord. There's a progression here. Like, if you're strong, you have the ability to determine your boundaries. Yes. So, you know, let's make this real practical. My kids, I've taught them, hey, there's going to be a time that you're going to want to hold hands with the person you're on a date with. Yeah. There's going to be a time that y'all are going to want to put your arms around each other. If it's he may want to put his arm around one of my daughters, or one of my son may want to put an arm around the girl he's on a date with. There's going to be a time where y'all might want to exchange a kiss. And so to my daughters, I say this: consent always has to be given.
Amen. And
if it's not, and he acts,
that's a problem.
Bring him to me.
Yes, Lord.
Because my job as dad is to be provider and protector. I got other jobs. Yeah. But at the top of the list is provider and protector. Yes. So if he's not gonna respect you enough to have consent, even if it's just holding your hand, then bring him to me and I'll protect you from him. Yes. Yeah. And so I want my daughters to feel very, because of their faith, empowered to walk in Christ. And so consent matters. Yeah. But what I try to. But you got to know those boundaries. Like, it's one thing to hold hands, but Jeff, like, as I'm talking with my kids about this stuff, it's another thing. But you'll never lay down on the couch and watch a movie together. Amen. Y'all ain't playing cuddle together. Yeah. Right? Like, you can sit on the couch. In fact, I was so proud of one young man. I won't say his name because I'd never embarrass him. And he wanted to go on a date with my daughter. And one of my rules is, I want you to come by the house. I want you to be around our family. Yeah. You're welcome to stop in for a meal. Yeah. So he did. And then my daughter was like, hey, instead of us going out on a date, can we just hang out here? Oh, wow. That's awesome. And so we were like, sure. Yeah. She's like, can we watch a movie? I'm like, yeah. And they were watching he had never seen certain Disney classics. And so she was like, you haven't seen that? We got to fix your childhood, you know? Yeah. And so they were watching a Disney classic. And I was gone. He looked at my wife and he goes, is it okay if I put my arm around her? Oh, wow. And that spoke volumes. Oh, that's really great. Wow, and he asked that of my wife in front of my daughter, and my daughter was okay with it. She had already said she was okay with it, but he wanted to go the extra mile. And so they sat there, not cuddling, because one of my rules is you ain't going. And by the way, don't be draping your legs over each other. Like, don't do things that are going to pointlessly tempt you physically. Exactly. All of us would be guilty. That's so good of being tempted. So he sat there with his arm around her. Yeah. They laughed and watched this silly, fun movie. Yeah. And she put her head on his shoulder, a little bit. Yeah. But it was never. They're happy to go, this is our boundary. And my dad's helped me figure out some other boundaries that are based on wisdom. Yep. Like, we're not going to cuddle together. We're not going to get under a cover together. Right. We're not going to drape our legs over each other. We're not going to take naps together. Right. I mean, playing house, basically. We're not doing any of that, But I would encourage, and I have encouraged my own kids and, students that I talk to, like, just feel free to fill pages in a journal of what do those boundaries look like for you. That's not being legalistic. Right. That's being wise. And responsible. And I would add to that, as a boy dad, I would always tell my boys, when it comes to the boundary, never assume. Right. And I appreciate the young man even asking, Chris, hey, is it okay? You don't ever assume because when you assume, you put yourself in a position to have your good be evil spoken of. That's right. And so, for me, man, having all boys, Quo and I, we actually, many would say, we approached our boys in dating like, I would if I had a daughter. Like we, obviously there's different conversations,
because you don't want a young woman to ever feel uncomfortable in your presence. And
Sure.
so we talked a lot about making a young woman, feel comfortable and safe. And the way you do that is how you respect and honor her. We talked about also open the door, and make sure, like I said, don't assume and all that stuff. But we taught our boys on the boundaries, especially in the boundary conversation. We treat like we were talking to girls.
Yeah.
And I think that there is some, if you're parenting, both males and females, sons and daughters, I think there are some conversations that are exclusively gender based. Mm-hmm. And then there's some that are just non-negotiables across the board. And so for us, man, that boundary thing was so important. And we said, hey, and we had real conversations. Like my wife would always say, okay, we established early on, okay, these are the conversations that we can have as mommy and daddy together with our kids. These are some that I can speak from a perspective of a woman, and like, this is how you treat a woman and everything. And she would say, but then there's some you need to talk to them as a young man. Like, this is how you have to conduct yourself and carry yourself and create those boundaries. And I told him, I said, hey, one of the things that was very important, I said, if you're not to be home alone with a young woman. So if you're going to visit her, hang out, watch a movie.
Yeah, alone. That was a big one for us.
The parents need to be there. And then the thing that I would often ask, my boys hated this, because my wife and I, we would call like, hey, if they're gonna be over there, we had to talk to the parents. And I was like, hey, how close are y'all gonna be? I don't want you to be all up in your room with your door closed and everything. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be there hovering. But I would like for you not to
proximity.
Yeah, to have some proximity, because I just didn't want our boys to be in a position of compromise. And so I was very proud of the one time that really happened was with Jay, his junior year. I'll never forget this, because he actually, which was heartbreaking, he actually got clowned by the girl because he went over thinking that parents are going to be there, and the young lady's mom, dad was out. He was out of town for work. Mom left, so he gets there and he says, "Hey, where's your mom?" Oh, she went to the store. She'll be back. And so he says, "I'm gonna go and stay in the car and wait till she get back." And she's like, "Why?" Says, I don't, we're in the house and,
wisdom,
and I just don't want to put myself in that situation, blah, blah. She'll be right back. And so the young lady was trying to get him to come in and
go for a walk in the neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. Something. And so he's like, and so he said, why can't we just sit out here outside by my car and let's just talk?
Good for him.
And she didn't want to. And so he told me later, he's like, Daddy, it was like a light bulb went off, like, oh, she's trying to lure me.
This was planned.
It was planned. And so he was like, I tell you what, because she was so persistent about him coming in the house that I was so proud of him. He said, you know what? I tell you what, I'll just go. So he left. And she, they went to school together and went back, and it was all over school. He's scared, he cat, and didn't want to come in. And then I said, "What'd you say?" He said, I told her, because she had this big thing in the hallway. He's like, "No, I'm not a scared cat. I'm just wise, and I'm wise enough now to know that you're not the right young lady for me."
Yeah, and now fast forward, and Jay's engaged to a young woman of God, and they're gonna have a great life and a love story together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we know that young lady that was in that, and she's had to say a tough life, and so. But again, instilling those boundaries, like, hey, to my boys, these are non-negotiables, because all you need, for me, Brent, it was about the accusations,
right?
Possible accusations. You don't want a young lady to even put an accusation out there that, hey, you forced yourself on her or something. And if you're in this,
and reverse, you don't want a young man out there talking bad about a young girl who exactly. There's no good.
There's no win in that. So anyway, I say that to say that I love that about men putting those boundaries in place, because
but the alone one is a big boundary.
That's a big one,
and I think everybody should adhere to that one. My kids, I was so proud of one of my kids that was going on a date, and they went they're always asking the question, how can we be alone in a crowd?
That's a great
and
question.
I love the way they worded it.
That's a great question.
So we can be alone in a crowd in a coffee shop. We can be alone in a crowd walking around looking at stores. We can be alone in a crowd at a restaurant. We can be alone in a crowd in a park. There's a lot of ways to be alone in a crowd.
Versus alone.
Versus alone ain't nobody around. Right. And we're not saying don't be alone. Yeah. Just don't be alone with nobody around.
Exactly.
And there's a way to do that.
Yeah.
And that alone one is a big one.
That's
now,
huge.
I will say this about the boundaries thing and the guidelines that I give forth to young men. My son takes those guidelines to the father of the girl he's going to go on a date with.
So good.
And he's like, "Sir, I don't know what your rules are. If you have any, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
I want to ask permission to go on a date with your daughter, but just so you know, here's my boundaries and here's the rules I follow.
Yeah.
Would you add anything to that?"
Oh, that's so good.
And so it's not really just good, these aren't just for my girls.
Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah.
And what I've discovered, what my kids are discovering, is those who don't care about respect, you don't want to be in a long-term relationship with them anyway.
Absolutely.
Those who do care about respect, that's already a good sign that you're both going to walk in wisdom.
Right.
And it may work out, it may not.
Yeah.
But the potential is there.
That's what you want. I think right there, that's what you want. And you want to put yourself in positions to have a higher probability for success.
Yeah.
Than failure, and so that's good, man. So all right, so you want to pause right there?
Yeah, let's do the next four in our next conversation.
We'll
so far, guys, we're talking about how to have a Christ-centered approach to dating, how to honor Jesus through our dating relationships. Start with our why, be strong in your faith, and don't wait to determine your boundaries so you can walk in wisdom. And we're going to get to the next four.
Cannot wait.
In the next episode. Until we meet again, wander well and shine like stars.
God bless you.